In the quiet of Ireland's rain-washed fields, a rare fire appears. Not loud, not common, but unforgettable. Red hair. Less than a whisper of the world carries it, yet this island holds it like an inheritance. Not a fashion, not coincidence. A genetic memory that refused to disappear. Tonight we trace the bloodline of flame. Red hair is the rarest natural hair color on Earth. Globally, it belongs to a small fraction of humanity. But in Ireland, it gathers, it concentrates, it survives. This is not mythology. This is population genetics, shaped by land, isolation, climate, and time. And the answer lives deep inside a single gene, quietly deciding who will carry the fire. Chapter 1. The MAXE1R gene. At the center of this mystery lies something almost impossibly small. Not a myth, not a curse, not a legend whispered into existence. A single instruction written quietly into the architecture of the body itself, the MC1R gene. It does not speak loudly, it does not demand attention, it does not shape bones or organs or stature. Yet its influence reaches the surface of the human story in unmistakable ways. Its task on paper is simple, almost mundane. It governs a single decision inside the body: what kind of melanin will be made. Melanin is the body's response to light, its shield, its interpreter of the sun. In most humans, this system follows the well-worn path. The gene signals clearly. The instruction is strong, the body produces eumelanin. Dark, dense, efficient, eumelanin absorbs ultraviolet radiation. It diffuses harm. It protects cells from damage. It is practical, reliable, evolutionarily favored under harsh suns and open skies. For most of humanity, this is the default setting, the pigment of endurance, the color of survival. But in certain bodies and certain bloodlines, the signal falters, not breaks completely, not disappears, it weakens. Variants of the MC1R gene interrupt the usual message. They soften the command that tells the body to produce dark pigment. The instruction arrives distorted, incomplete, less convincing, and the body adapts. Instead of eumelanin, it begins to produce pheomelanin. This pigment behaves differently. It reflects more light than it absorbs. It carries warm tones, copper, gold, flame. It offers less protection from the sun, but it carries a distinct visual signature. Pheomelanin is rarer, less efficient by evolutionary standards, and unmistakable when it appears. This single biochemical shift changes everything. Hair emerges not brown or black, but red or auburn, or strawberry blonde, or copper bright enough to catch fire in sunlight. Skin lightens, translucent, sometimes porcelain. Veins become visible beneath the surface, like blue rivers under thin ice. Freckles appear not randomly, but deliberately small constellations of pigment scattered across cheeks, shoulders, arms. Each one a record of how the skin responds to light, not by resistance, but by marking. The body, in a sense, stops hiding from the sun and instead begins to remember it. But here's where the story becomes more selective, more secretive. The MC1R gene is recessive. It does not announce itself when it stands alone. It does not dominate. It does not override other instructions. One copy is not enough. A person can carry it silently, live their entire life without red hair, without freckles, without knowing the fire is there at all. The gene waits. It requires inheritance from both parents. Two separate bloodlines, two quiet transmissions, two ancestral threads that never revealed themselves outwardly. Two silent carriers must meet. Each parent brings half the story. Each contributes a piece that, on its own, does nothing remarkable. No signal flare, no visible sign. But when those pieces align, when both parents pass on the variant, the instruction finally completes itself. Only then does the message change fully. Only then does pheomelanin dominate. Only then does the hidden become visible. Only then does the fire show itself. Not as chance, not as anomaly, but as the convergence of invisible histories, generations of quiet inheritance, waiting for the exact moment when two lines cross and something rare is allowed to surface. Chapter 2. Isolation preserves rarity. Recessive traits live on a knife's edge. They are delicate by nature, easily diluted, easily lost. In large populations that mix constantly, where people migrate freely, where bloodlines scatter and recombine without pause, recessive genes are overwhelmed. They are softened by dominant traits, smoothed out by probability, eventually erased by arithmetic alone. Not because they are weak, but because they are rare. For a recessive trait to survive, it requires repetition, familiarity, return. And for most of the world, history offered no such patience. But Ireland was different. For thousands of years, it existed as a contained world, an island held apart by cold waters and rough seas, set at the far edge of Europe, where arrival required intention and departure required resolve. This was not a crossroads of empires, not a land endlessly flooded by armies, traders, and settlers. Migration happened but slowly, unevenly, selectively. People did not pass through Ireland in waves. They arrived in trickles. They stayed or they left entirely. Families rooted themselves to land, to valleys, to coastlines, to hills whose names their ancestors already knew. Movement was measured in miles, not continents. Generations lived and died within the same radius of earth and sky. Communities were small, familiar, interwoven. People married who they knew, who their parents knew, who shared not just language but memory. Lineages did not fan outward into anonymity. They folded inward, back into themselves, again and again. In this kind of environment, something unusual happens. Rare genes are not drowned out. They are not scattered beyond recognition. They circulate. They move quietly from parent to child, from grandparent to grandchild. Sometimes visible, often hidden, but never entirely gone. A recessive gene can disappear for a generation, then return unexpectedly in the next. It can sleep unnoticed for decades, then surface suddenly when the conditions align. Ireland allowed this waiting. What would have vanished elsewhere, absorbed into larger populations, dissolved by endless mixing, was permitted to remain here. Not celebrated, not protected consciously, simply left undisturbed. The MC1R variants passed hand to hand, blood to blood, century to century. No dramatic event preserved them, no deliberate choice. Only continuity. Isolation did not invent red hair. It did not conjure it into existence. It did not create the fire. It did something quieter and far more powerful. It protected it. By slowing the world. By narrowing the circle. By allowing the same stories, genetic and human, to repeat themselves until rarity became familiar, and familiarity ensured survival. On this island at the edge of Europe, what should have faded was allowed to endure. Chapter 3. The Climate Advantage. Northern skies are not generous. They ration light. They withhold warmth. They offer the sun in brief appearances, then take it back behind layers of cloud and distance. In the far north, daylight is seasonal. Summer gives long, slanted hours of pale brightness. Winter stretches into months of gray low sun, weak rays, cold air that scatters what little light remains. In such places, survival is not shaped only by strength or speed. It is shaped by chemistry, by how the body responds to scarcity. One molecule becomes decisive: vitamin D. Vitamin D is not optional. It governs bone strength, immune resilience, muscle function, fertility, child development. Without it, bodies weaken quietly. Bones soften. Resistance falters. Lifespans shorten without spectacle. In sun-rich regions, vitamin D is abundant. Dark skin thrives there, shielding the body from excess radiation while still allowing enough light to pass through. But in northern latitudes, the equation changes. When sunlight is weak, when clouds dominate the sky, when the sun rides low even at midday, dark pigmentation becomes a barrier rather than a shield. Here, lighter skin gains an advantage. Skin with less eumelanin absorbs ultraviolet light more readily. It captures what little radiation exists. It synthesizes vitamin D faster with less exposure in fewer hours of daylight. The same genetic variations that interrupt dark pigment production, the same MC1R variants that allow pheomelanin to rise, often bring with them very light skin. Skin that does not resist the sun. Skin that receives it. In northern climates, this mattered. It did not make red hair dominant. It did not suddenly elevate it above all other traits. There was no explosion of fire-haired populations overnight. But it did something more subtle. It made the trait viable. The environment did not actively reward red hair. It did not favor it aggressively, but it also did not punish it. The lighter skin associated with these genes pulled more vitamin D from weak sunlight. Children survived winters more reliably. Adults maintained stronger bodies in years of scarcity. The cost-increased sun sensitivity was minimal in a land where strong sun was rare. What would have been a liability near the equator became neutral, even quietly beneficial under northern skies, and neutrality matters in evolution, because evolution is not always about selection and favor. It is not always about advantage winning decisively. Often it is about something simpler. Persistence. Traits that are punished disappear quickly. Traits that are tolerated can endure indefinitely. Over centuries, that tolerance compounds. Generation after generation inherits the gene, sometimes visible, sometimes hidden, sometimes paired, sometimes not, but never eliminated. The climate did not elevate the MC1R gene. It did not crown it. It merely allowed it to remain. And in evolutionary time, not being erased is enough. Because when isolation preserves rarity and climate does not destroy it, even the quietest gene can survive the slow passage of centuries waiting, patiently, for the moment when fire appears again beneath pale northern light. Chapter 4. Vikings did not create it. Popular stories like Clean Origins, they prefer a single moment, a dramatic arrival, a ship on the horizon, a cause you can point to and name. So the story is often pushed northward. Blonde raiders, cold seas, Norse blood igniting Irish flame. Viking fire carried on longships, dropped onto the island like a spark. It is a compelling image. Sharp, violent, memorable, and wrong. The genetics do not agree. Modern myth leans on visibility, on what history wrote down, on what invasion made loud enough to be remembered. But DNA remembers quietly. Ancient genetic evidence tells a different story, one without ships or raids or sudden introductions. Variants of the MC1R gene were already present in Ireland, long before the first Viking sail cut the Atlantic horizon. Long before Norse boots touched Irish soil. Long before axes, settlements, or sagas. Celtic populations carried the gene already. Not as spectacle, not as identity, but as inheritance. It moved silently through families, passed from parent to child without ceremony, sometimes visible, often hidden, always there. Generation after generation carried it forward through Bronze Age lives, through Iron Age communities, through centuries that left no written record but left their trace in blood. The Vikings did arrive. That part is true. They settled. They intermarried. They left marks on language, trade, warfare, and coastline. And yes, they too carried similar traits. Light skin, occasional red hair, variants of the same gene. But similarity is not origin. Two fires can burn the same color without one lighting the other. The Vikings did not introduce red hair to Ireland. They encountered it. They found a population in which the flame already existed, quietly circulating, already preserved by isolation, already tolerated by climate. What invasion did was mix stories, not create them. It added threads to a tapestry that was already being woven, Red hair in Ireland predates Norse contact. It predates Viking mythology. It predates conquest narratives altogether. It is older than invasion, older than raids, older than kingdoms named on maps. It reaches back before surnames, before borders, before history was written down at all. When people point north and say, "That is where it came from," they mistake resemblance for source. The truth is less dramatic and far more enduring. The flame was already there, waiting in the gene pool, passing through time unnoticed, surviving quietly while empires came and went. The Vikings did not bring the fire to Ireland. They simply arrived and discovered they were not alone in carrying it. Chapter 5. Why it feels mythic. Rarity never remains neutral. When something appears infrequently, the human mind refuses to leave it unnamed. Difference attracts attention, attention attracts interpretation, and interpretation over time hardens into meaning. In close-knit communities, small villages, shared bloodlines, familiar faces, red hair could not hide. It announced itself immediately, at birth, in childhood, in sunlight. Where most heads blended into browns and blacks, one flame stood apart. Where skin tones clustered together, one shimmered paler, freckled, unmistakable. Visibility creates story. People noticed, they remembered, they talked. And when a trait is rare enough, it stops being treated as biology and starts being treated as signal. Temper was assigned, fire in the blood, a quicker anger, a sharper will. Old folklore spoke of the fair folk, those not entirely of this world. Beings touched by something older, something parallel, something slightly out of step with ordinary life. Red hair slipped easily into these frameworks. It looked like flame. It reacted to the sun. It appeared unpredictably. So, it was folded into myth, the otherworldly, the dangerous, the gifted, the cursed. Mythology wrapped itself around genetics not because people were foolish, but because they were human. Humans seek explanation long before they seek data. Stories come first. Statistics arrive centuries later. No one could see recessive inheritance. No one understood carrier states. No one mapped genes or probabilities. What they could see was pattern. A red-haired child born to dark-haired parents. A trait skipping generations then returning. A fire appearing where none existed before. Without science, mystery fills the gap. But beneath every superstition there was mathematics at work. Quiet, unromantic, relentless. Two carriers crossing paths. Two invisible instructions aligning. A recessive trait finally surfacing. The child was not enchanted. They were revealing something that had always been there. A visible past made flesh. What felt magical was inheritance announcing itself. What felt like destiny was probability finally resolving. Myth did not create meaning out of nothing. It responded to what it could not yet explain. And even now, knowing the biology, the feeling lingers. Because when something rare appears, especially when it carries history on its surface, it still feels like more than chance. But the truth is quieter and no less profound. Red hair did not come from magic. It came from memory. Not the memory of stories, but the memory of blood carrying instructions patiently through time until, in one child, the past became visible again. Chapter 6. The Gene. Still hides. The most important thing about the red hair gene is that it is almost always invisible. What people imagine is fire, bright, unmistakable, announcing itself at a glance. But that image represents only the surface expression. Only the rare moment when all conditions align. Most of the time, the gene is silent. Most people who carry the MC1R variant do not have red hair. They never will. It lives beneath dark strands. Brown hair. Black hair. Chestnut. Hidden under pigments that deaminate more easily. It sits behind brown eyes. Behind hazel. Behind features that draw no second glance. From the outside, there is nothing to suggest it is there at all. Ireland, in fact, holds far more carriers than redheads. For every visible flame, there are many quiet vessels. People walking through life unaware that they carry a recessive history inside them. The gene moves this way by design. Recessive inheritance does not rush. It does not insist. It waits. It passes from parent to child without expression. It survives being paired with dominant traits. It endures being masked. In one generation, it may surface brightly, a red-haired child born into a family of dark features. In the next, it may disappear again, as if it were never there. But disappearance is not erasure. Families tell stories like coincidences. There was a red-haired aunt, a grandfather long ago, someone on the other side of the family. These are not anomalies, they are evidence of sleep. The gene drifts quietly through time, sometimes hidden for centuries, sometimes revealed suddenly and without warning. And when it returns, it does so with certainty. No negotiation, no ambiguity. A child is born carrying a visible past, a trait that has traveled through generations without ever fully leaving. This is why ancestry never truly vanishes. Names change, borders move, records burn, languages shift, but genes do not forget. They wait. They persist beneath ordinary appearances, inside bodies that seem unremarkable, inside lives that appear disconnected from history. Until one moment, one pairing, one alignment, and something old steps forward again. The red hair gene does not need continuity of story. It does not need memory to survive. It only needs time. And time, as Ireland has proven, is something inheritance understands very well. Red hair in Ireland is not an aesthetic. It is a fossil of ancestry, a reminder that genetics remembers what culture forgets. It survived conquest, migration, modern blending. Not because it was powerful, but because it was protected. A quiet inheritance, passed hand to hand, century to century, still glowing, still rare, still Irish. If you felt the weight of ancestry in this story, leave a quiet mark below. Subscribe to Moonlight Whisper for the histories that hide in blood, names, and memory. Until next time, listen closely.